Let me paint you a picture that should keep you awake at night. Rome burning, while its citizens clutched worthless coins. Madrid's royal treasury echoing empty after conquistadors shipped home mountains of gold. London watching the pound, once master of the seas, crumble like old parchment. And while entire populations stood by helplessly as their life savings evaporized, in counting houses from Florence to Amsterdam, certain families were quietly recording the most extraordinary profits in human history. Welcome to Capital History, your front row seat to the past. This isn't conspiracy nonsense. This is pattern recognition. When mighty empires collapse, when currencies die their inevitable deaths, when proud nations default on their promises, there's always someone who walks away richer. And it's never the people you'd expect. Spain controlled more gold than Croesus could have dreamed of. 4 times they went bankrupt anyway. But those shrewd Genoese merchant families, they didn't just survive, they practically bought Europe. Britain ruled waves and continents for 3 centuries straight. 2 world wars later, they were selling the crown jewels to pay the bills. But sharp American industrialists like J.P. Morgan, they picked up Britain's finest assets for pennies on the pound. Here's what should terrify every thinking person. Right now, behind closed doors, economists are whispering about stage 6 of the debt supercycle. 350 trillion in global debt, money that doesn't even exist yet. Political systems tearing themselves apart at the seams. Currency wars brewing like storm clouds. And while you're losing sleep over inflation devouring your savings, the smart money? They already packed their bags months ago. Central banks hoarding gold like it's the last food on earth. Corporate titans quietly building Bitcoin fortresses. Rivers of capital flowing towards Singapore, Switzerland, Dubai, anywhere but here. The greatest theft of wealth in human history isn't coming. It's already started. The only question left is whether you'll be the mark, or whether you still have time to get on the right side of history. Let me tell you a story that changed everything, and why it's playing out again right in front of your eyes. Picture Spain in 1556. Not the Spain you know today, but the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. American treasure ships pulling into Seville every month like clockwork, their hulls groaning under the weight of Aztec and Inca gold. King Philip II sitting on more wealth than every previous empire combined. The man literally owned half the known world. So, naturally, he went completely broke. Not once, not twice, 4 separate times. Here's the part they don't teach you in school. All that glittering gold didn't make Spain rich, it made them poor. When you flood any market with too much of anything, even gold, you destroy its value. Spanish silver bought less bread in Madrid than it did in enemy Amsterdam. Philip's treasury was drowning in precious metal, but starving for actual wealth. While Spanish nobles were busy counting coins, there were families you've never heard of playing a completely different game. Names like Centurione, Pallavicini, Genoese banking dynasties whose descendants still control Swiss vaults today. They watched Philip's court celebrating their golden windfall and quietly started moving their money north. Their strategy was surgical precision. As Spanish debt exploded past 300% of tax revenue, these families liquidated every Spanish position they owned, and scattered their capital across Amsterdam, London, Hamburg. They understood something governments never learn. Paper money dies. Hard assets live forever. The Fugger family took it even further. While other bankers were all in on one kingdom, they spread their bets across 5 different countries. German mining operations, Venetian trade routes, real estate from Antwerp to Naples. When Spain defaulted, again, they just shrugged and collected from England instead. This was the blueprint they perfected 500 years ago. When empires start printing money to pay for wars, smart money runs to things that can't be printed: land, mines, businesses that produce real value. And they do it years before the crash becomes front-page news. Does this sound familiar yet? The year was 1914. And if you were a betting man, you'd have put everything on Britain. The British Empire wasn't just powerful, it was invincible. 1/4 of the entire planet flew the Union Jack. The pound sterling was money, not just British money, global money. London's financial district was the beating heart of world commerce. 4 years later, Britain was financially devastated. Here's the story they edited out of your history textbooks. World War I didn't just kill 10 million young men. It murdered the world's first truly global currency. Britain borrowed like there was no tomorrow because, frankly, they thought there might not be. War debt hit 250% of GDP. Think about those numbers for a second. For every pound the entire British Empire produced in a year, the government owed 2.5 pounds to someone else. But here's where the story gets really interesting. While Britain was bleeding money from every vein, certain American industrialists were positioning themselves like chess masters 20 moves ahead. Phase 1 was beautiful in its simplicity. When German U-boats started prowling the Atlantic, panicked British investors liquidated everything, stocks, bonds, entire estates, and shipped the cash straight to New York banks. Safekeeping, they called it. Phase 2 was the Roaring '20s, when Wall Street officially stole London's crown and became the world's financial capital. American money poured back into European reconstruction, but now at American interest rates, on American terms. Phase 3 was the coup de grace. World War II forced Britain to sell $75 billion worth of assets, that's nearly $1 trillion in today's money, to American buyers. Crown jewel companies, strategic resources, entire industries built over centuries, sold off like garage sale furniture. The Morgans, the Rockefellers, the Mellons, they didn't just survive Britain's collapse. They orchestrated the most elegant wealth transfer in recorded history. These transitions don't happen overnight. They take decades to unfold. But they make generational fortunes for those smart enough to see the writing on the wall. But this time, the playbook is completely different. We're not watching the Spanish peso collapse while Dutch merchants count their profits. We're not seeing sterling die while the dollar rises. For the first time in monetary history, the world's reserve currency, the supposedly almighty dollar, is facing its own mortality with no obvious successor waiting in the wings. Think about the implications. When Spain imploded, smart money fled to stronger European kingdoms. When Britain bled out, America stood ready with growing factories and open arms. But today, China's yuan is trapped behind capital controls like a bird in a cage. The euro is fragmenting faster than you can say sovereign debt crisis. We're staring down the first global reserve currency collapse with nowhere obvious for $30 trillion to run. So where does money hide when there's no obvious empire to bet on? Gold, of course. 5,000 years of monetary chaos, and gold has never, not once, gone to zero. Central banks aren't just buying, they're hoarding. Over 1,000 tons annually for 3 straight years. That's not portfolio diversification. That's preparation for war. But here's the wild card nobody saw coming. Bitcoin. Digital scarcity in an age of infinite printing. Unproven? Absolutely. Intriguing? When MicroStrategy is betting their entire company on it, maybe the experiment is further along than we thought. Then there's the geography game that's fascinating to watch. Singapore building Swiss-level banking with Asian efficiency. Switzerland running negative debt while Europe drowns. Vietnam, UAE, dark horse nations positioning themselves as neutral ground for when the superpowers tear each other apart. But here's what those old Fugger bankers understood that we've completely forgotten. Real wealth isn't stored in any currency at all. It's in the things that produce value when paper money becomes worthless. Farmland that feeds people. Energy infrastructure that powers civilization. The businesses that people need, regardless of which politicians are printing which currencies. That's where generational wealth hides when empires crumble. All right, so you understand the historical patterns. You can see the game board. Now comes the part that separates the prepared from the unprepared. What do you actually do with this knowledge? Let's be realistic here. Most people have between $10,000 and $100,000 to work with. You're not buying Swiss bank vaults or Cayman Island trusts. But here's what those brilliant Genoese families taught us. It's not about how much you have, it's about how intelligently you position what you do have. Start with your foundation. 10 to 20% precious metals. Not because gold is glamorous, because it's boring and dependable. 5,000 years of empires have tried to kill it. Every single one failed. Add 5 to 10% Bitcoin. Yes, it's volatile as hell. Yes, it's unproven in a real crisis. But when governments are destroying currencies at light speed, digital scarcity starts looking like genius. But here's the secret weapon the history books always miss. Your skills matter more than your gold. The Fugger bankers didn't just move money, they moved themselves. Languages, technical expertise, portable careers. These travel across any border, survive any currency collapse, thrive in any economy. Got 100,000 to 1,000,000? Now you're playing with serious money. International diversification becomes reality. Singapore real estate, Swiss accounts, Norwegian energy stocks. Betting on countries with negative debt ratios while America drowns in IOUs. Million plus? Welcome to the grown-ups table. Offshore structures, second passports, the full strategy, maximum safety combined with maximum opportunity. Because when stage 6 hits, geography becomes destiny. But remember the most important lesson. The Genoese didn't wait for Spain's final collapse to move their money. They positioned themselves years before it became obvious to everyone else. Start small. Start today. Because the crowd always shows up after the wealth has already moved. Here's what haunts me, and should haunt you too. Every family that preserved wealth through history's great collapses shares exactly one characteristic. They moved before anyone else even smelled smoke in the air. The Genoese? Gone from Spain 2 full years before that catastrophic fourth default. The Rothschilds? Quietly dumping British positions in 1913, a full year before the Great War destroyed sterling forever. These families didn't have crystal balls or inside information. They simply recognized patterns that everyone else chose to ignore, because acknowledging them was too uncomfortable. And right now, those same patterns are screaming at us. Literally screaming. Central banks bought 1,136 tons of gold in 2024 alone. That's not smart diversification. That's panic buying in slow motion. MicroStrategy's Bitcoin treasury just hit $42 billion and growing. Singapore's private banking assets up 300% in 5 years. The smart money isn't preparing to move. It's already halfway out the door. But what keeps me awake at night is this. The lifeboats are filling up fast. When BlackRock starts pushing Bitcoin ETFs to mom-and-pop investors, when sovereign wealth funds open Dubai offices, when Swiss banks start hiring Mandarin speakers, that's not the beginning of the Great Migration. That's the middle innings. The Fuggers understood something we've completely forgotten. Wealth preservation isn't about timing the perfect moment to act. It's about positioning yourself before positioning becomes expensive and competitive. Start with $50 in silver coins if that's all you have. Open that international account. Learn that second language. Because when the masses finally wake up to stage 6 of this debt nightmare, history shows absolutely no mercy to the unprepared. The great wealth transfer isn't some future event. It's happening right now, while you're listening to this. The only question that matters is which side of it you'll find yourself on when the dust settles.